My family and I had a personal miracle this past week. My daughter and her family were on vacation. The person watching their 4-year-old son, my grandson, got distracted. Only takes a moment. His other grandfather found him in the pool, underwater. Pulled him out. He was limp. He was blue. There was no heartbeat. He wasn't breathing. He shouted. My daughter came running out. She had just gotten recertified in CPR last month. She performed CPR, brought him back to life. Called the ambulance. It was touch and go. He wasn't immediately responsive. But very quickly he came back to himself. They kept him overnight for observation, but they released him the next morning, discharged him. Everything appeared to be fine. The doctors said they could not believe that he came back to himself so quickly, so full recovery. They couldn't explain it. Now, we're very grateful. But there's also room for reflection here. For one thing, the person who was watching him, a responsible person, a good person. We're human beings. We all have lapses. We all get distracted. It's easy to take your eye off the ball and lose focus. It happens to all of us. And that's why, one, it's so important to give others grace. When we make mistakes, we get things wrong. All the more so when there's a happy ending. But to always recognize we're not perfect. We're not made to be perfect. We need to be forgiving. We need to give people the benefit of the doubt and show grace. And also, we need to recognize our own limitations because we're not perfect either. And it could have been us. We could have made that mistake. We need each other. We need to support each other, be there for each other. Because we can't go it alone. We can't get by alone. We need family. We need community. We need people around us to support us, to help us, to keep a check on one another. Now, what's really fascinating is that this past week's Torah portion contains the famous episode of the splitting of the sea, the Israelites fleeing from Pharaoh's chariot from their oppression in Egypt. They're locked up between a canyon and the sea before them. Pharaoh's chariots are approaching, descending upon them, and it looks hopeless, and they feel hopeless. They cry out to Moses, "Did you bring us out here to die? There weren't enough graves in Egypt." Miraculously, the sea opens before them. Nature gets out of their way. They race through the sea on dry land, come out the other side, and the sea closes in, goes back to nature. Nature reasserts itself, destroying Pharaoh's chariots and army, so that the Jews know that their tormentors, their oppressors will never bother them again, will never come after them. We take so much for granted in our lives. We expect things to be just fine. And when they aren't, we can go to pieces. We get flustered, we get bitter, we get angry. Sometimes it's a gift when crisis strikes. When something goes wrong, maybe catastrophically wrong, and then when it looks like all is lost, we pull back, or we're pulled back from the brink. Everything goes back to normal, but we're not the same, because that flirting with disaster has reaffirmed our appreciation of all the things in our lives that we have so much to be grateful for. And what did the Jews do? They sang a song of praise to the one who had delivered them from Egypt and the oppression and the slavery of the Egyptians. They needed to feel that all was lost in order to appreciate all they had. They needed to be brought to the brink of destruction to appreciate appreciate their lives and the opportunity that lay before them. And as they went through the desert, there was another episode with water. 3 days they came to a place called Marah. And they went to drink from the waters there, and the waters were bitter. They couldn't drink. And again, they complained. Are we going to die in the desertness, or will we die of thirst? And Moses takes a tree, and he throws it into the waters, and the waters become sweet. What is this tree? Sages tell us the tree is a symbol for divine wisdom. Why? Because we live in a world where we are rooted in the earth. We're planted on the ground, and yet we aspire towards the heavens, towards greatness, towards purpose. Human beings are compared to a tree because we live in a physical world, and yet we have spiritual aspirations. And the divine wisdom that's given to us is the source of life. It's organic, it's growing, it's breathing, it sustains us. And when we look at the world through the lens of divine wisdom, the day-to-day routine that can become bitter and frustrating, we appreciate what we have. The waters become sweet, not just drinkable, but sweet. We have to go through bitterness to appreciate sweetness. We have to go through slavery to appreciate freedom. We have to be brought to the brink of crisis to appreciate the day-to-day. Children are a challenge. They're needy, they're clingy, they're whiny, they're kvetchy. They keep us up at night. And it's easy for us to become frustrated with them. I want to do the things I want to do. I want my life back. I want to be able to go do this and that and the but when their lives are in danger, all of a sudden nothing else matters. This precious child, that's all I want is that precious child. And the fear of losing, the appearance of losing a child, God forbid, and then to have that child come back. Nothing else matters. This is the way we need to go through life. To recognize how fortunate we are, the blessings we have. To understand that the drudgery, the day-to-day, those little inconveniences, keep them in perspective. We live in a world where there is so much abundance. We have so many gifts that previous generations never had before, and yet our human nature makes us look for what's wrong, what's missing, what can we find to be unhappy about. You look at the things that people are fighting about today and compare them to the problems that people had a generation ago or 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago, and it's absurd. We should be embarrassed that we're complaining about the things that we complain about. And there's so much to be grateful for. We're certainly going to remember in my family, at least for a little while, to be grateful for children, to be grateful for life, to be grateful for the day-to-day when things run the way they're supposed to, despite those momentary inconveniences, despite those little speed bumps along the way. Let's all try to see the good in the world around us, the good in others, the good in ourselves, and to reach out to connect with others in a way where we can be supportive of one another, where we can literally support each other when we stumble, in our missteps, in our shortcomings, in our distractions. Because ultimately, when we rally together, when we look to support each other, when we look for the best and the good, and keep those little inconveniences in perspective, that's the key to happiness. That's the key to success. That's the key to living a good